What happens when the galaxy's most powerful council underestimates the quietest person in the room? General Evelyn Sharp wore humanity like old earth cotton, observing every ritual and recording every weakness. While aliens boasted she waited, her patience wasn't weakness, it was a blade being sharpened. They called it the most secure room in the galaxy. A dome carved from a single crystal, thick enough to stop a meteor strike, flanked by guards in armor that could withstand small arms fire. They filled it with alien dignitaries shouting mockeries, their voices bouncing off the facets of the walls, a chaotic symphony of threats and boasts in a dozen different languages. One human sat quietly near the edge of the chamber. General Evelyn Sharp wore a gray coat unadorned. She held a cup of tea, steam curling into the cold air. While empires argued, she sipped. Her posture showed nothing, no tension, no pride. She might have been waiting for a train. She wore humanity like old earth cotton, simple, practical, unassuming, a deliberate contrast to the shimmering silks and polished exoskeletons around her. They dismissed her input whenever she offered it, when she offered it at all. One of the Vresh ambassadors called humanity's proposals quaint. Another laughed, a dry clicking sound. Worthless. It became a theme. Then her calm voice cut through. Not loud, not sharp. It settled over the noise like a sheet. She spoke like a teacher addressing unruly students with a patience that felt like judgment. The floor recognizes the Terran delegate, the chair said without looking up. She did not rise. Thank you. I have several proposals concerning trade route security. She paused. The chamber grew still for a beat. They expected her to list them, to plead, to justify. Instead, she set her cup down. But I will hold them. Silence followed. Confusion. A low murmur started up again, dismissive. She had their attention and gave it back. Unused. This was not a place for human bravado. Not for grand speeches or dramatic threats. Something far more dangerous was at work here. Restraint became her primary weapon in this theater of power. Every moment she did not speak was a message. Every sip of tea was a calculated act. She revealed nothing. She had many proposals but chose silence. The galaxy, she knew, did not like when humans spoke too soon. It made them nervous. It made them underestimate. It made them forget the lesson of the Helios colony, a lesson she had not. The long game had begun, not with a declaration but with a decision to wait, to let them fill the silence with their own assumptions, their own flaws, their own pride. She watched them return to their arguments, their voices rising again, confident she had nothing to offer. They did not see the clock resetting. They did not feel the first move had already been made. Not with words, but without them. Silence is a language she speaks fluently. She understands its grammar, its pauses, its weight. Every time the Krell ambassador sighs and waves a dismissive hand, she notes the gesture, the angle of the wrist, the slight puff of air from his nasal vents. It isn't just an insult. It's a data point, a measure of his impatience, his arrogance, his predictability. When the Vresh delegate makes a joke at humanity's expense and the chamber echoes with rough, clattering laughter, she doesn't flinch. She watches. She sees who laughs the loudest, who hesitates, who looks uncomfortable. Every burst of mockery reveals a weakness, a fracture line in their unity she can map and remember. They see only a quiet mammal from a backwater world, a creature they believe is capable of simple tool use and basic emotion, but not grand strategy. They mistake her patience for a lack of ideas. They interpret her stillness as a lack of power. It is a critical error. They are looking for the flash of a weapon, the roar of an engine. They are not equipped to recognize a threat that does not announce itself. She collects more than insults. She gathers their rituals, the precise number of steps the Gellian patriarch takes before he sits, the specific pheromone cocktail the insectoid xylos emit when they are nervous. She catalogs their tempers. The Siluran's frill flushes a pale blue when he is about to lose an argument. The Krell ambassador clicks his mandibles twice before issuing a threat. She has learned the way each species blinks when they are lying, a subtle flicker for the reptilian Veerd, a complete lid closure for the mammalian fawn. This is her intelligence, not stolen documents or intercepted comms. It is observed, catalogued, and filed. Her aides do the same. A network of quiet human eyes and ears they never notice. The young lieutenant by the water station notes who drinks what and how often. The cultural attaché chatting with a minor functionary, records the cadence of casual complaints. They are ghosts in the room beneath notice, gathering the small unguarded truths that arrogant powers always let slip. They are harvesting vulnerabilities. This is not diplomacy. It is botany. It is geology. It is the careful, patient work of understanding a system by studying its smallest components. The real work happens far from the crystal chamber and its shouting. It happens in a quiet room on a human frigate with analysts reviewing footage, audio, and biometric data. They are not looking for declarations of war. They are analyzing patterns of behavior, predicting reactions, building psychological profiles so complete they can simulate any council member's response to any potential scenario. The power of restraint is a blade being sharpened, not sheathed. Each moment of silence adds another stroke to the edge. Each observed slight, each recorded tell, each measured heartbeat is another minute of grinding. The blade does not grow dull with disuse. It grows keener, sharper, more lethal. They will not fear her when she is quiet. They will grow comfortable. They will grow careless. They will learn to fear the quiet only when it is too late, when they realize what was built inside it, when they understand that her silence was never empty. It was full. It was a clock ticking down, a weapon loading, a storm gathering just beyond the range of their hearing. They brought mirrors, not armies. Where other species arrived with warships and demands, humanity sent a florist and a retired submarine engineer. The council saw it as a sign of weakness, a delegation of civilians, of specialists with no obvious martial function. They saw civility. They saw generosity. They did not see a threat. Earth donated advanced atmospheric processors to the Krell homeworld, whose industrial cities choked under permanent smog. They sent shipments of rare spices to the Vresh, whose bland fungal diets left them craving novelty. When a sonic disturbance on a Gellian colony ship terrified the larval young, human diplomats transmitted a low-frequency harmonic sequence. A lullaby, it worked. The Gellian matriarch sent a formal, puzzled thank you note. These were not acts of war. They were acts of calculated benevolence. Each gift was a single thread, thin and seemingly insignificant. An air filter, a seed packet, a song. But woven together, they formed a web of dependency. The air purifiers required proprietary filters, shipped quarterly from Earth. The spices were engineered to be mildly addictive, creating a market that only humanity could supply. The lullaby was more than sound. It was a proprietary acoustic algorithm, a piece of software that required licensing and updates. The kindness came with terms and conditions written in the fine print of interstellar trade law. The translator pins were the masterstroke. A generous gift to the entire council, allowing real-time universal translation, a marvel of human linguistics. The first models were rudimentary but functional. Then came the upgrades, quarterly. Each new iteration was smarter, faster, more efficient, and more loyal. The update protocols were hardwired to recognize Evelyn Sharp's command authority. The pins did not just translate words. They analyzed tone, stress, and subvocalizations. They logged conversations, encrypted the data, and pulsed it through secure civilian comms channels back to waiting analysts. They were not tools of communication. They were organs of assimilation and surveillance, a distributed listening post worn on every lapel, welcomed by its victims. The aliens grew comfortable. They grew reliant. The Krell ambassadors no longer complained about the human delegation. They inquired about the next spice shipment. The Vresh diplomats began scheduling meetings around the maintenance cycles for their new air scrubbers. They came to rely on human kindness for their comfort, their pleasure, even the safety of their children. They stopped seeing gifts and started seeing necessities. They were like patients who forget the medicine is what's making them sick. This mosaic of micro-interventions appeared as a portrait of trust, a record of a peaceful species buying its way into galactic society with generosity. But the portrait was a facade. Behind it was a schematic, a blueprint for control. Each act of charity was a pressure point identified and exploited. Each upgrade was a screw turned 1/4 rotation tighter. The trust was real, but it was a byproduct. The goal was always the trap. The web was nearly complete. They had accepted the food, the air, the words. They had welcomed the helpers, the engineers, the quiet woman with the tea. They had installed the mirrors and admired their reflection. They never asked what was behind the glass. They never wondered who was holding the other end of every thread they now relied on. The infrastructure of their daily comfort was now a system built, maintained and ultimately owned by humanity. Some memories are functional engines. They do not gather dust. They do not soften with time. They are cold, clean, precise machines that turn a single event into motive power. For General Evelyn Sharp, the memory of the Helios massacre was such an engine. It ran quietly in the background of every decision, every silence, every polite smile offered in the crystal chamber. A human moon colony, incinerated. A single Krell warship, responding to a minor trade skirmish with total force. A fuel-air explosive device detonated in the fragile lunar atmosphere. 5,000 colonists, men, women, children, not soldiers, not aggressors, farmers, engineers, teachers. They died in fire and vacuum because a Kessel commander's pride was bruised. The official reports called it a tragic miscalculation, a regrettable escalation. The council accepted this. They issued a statement of condolence. They held a moment of silence in the chamber. Then they moved on. No reparations were ever paid. No individual was ever named, tried, or held accountable. The incident was filed away. An oversight. A closed matter. For Evelyn, it was not a cry for vengeance. Vengeance is hot, emotional, and ultimately wasteful. It is a reactive force. For her, it was a matter of accounting. The Helios massacre was a cold, hard fact she kept in a mental vault, separate from the heat of anger or grief. It was a ledger entry. A debit against the galactic powers that had decided human life was a negotiable currency. She could recall the names of the colony's administrators. She could picture the layout of the primary habitat dome from the blueprints. The fact of its destruction was not a wound. It was a datum, the single most important piece of data in her possession. This datum became the moral hinge upon which all future actions would turn. It was the absolute standard against which every diplomatic maneuver, every covert action, every offered gift was measured. The patience was for Helios. The silence was for Helios. The intricate web of mirrors and dependencies was for Helios. The council forgot it happened. They assumed humanity had. They mistook the lack of screaming for a lack of memory. This was their second and far greater error. She did not forget. The silent woman drinking tea in the gray coat remembered every name. Her stillness was not acceptance. It was the stillness of a judge who has already heard all the evidence and is now only waiting to pass sentence. The council buried their oversight under layers of procedure and politics. Humanity did not forget its dead. We bury our oversights and we don't forget them. The incineration of Helios was not our oversight. It was theirs. A deliberate act of violence they chose to forget because it was convenient, because it was easy. A ledger must be balanced. This is not a law of finance. It is a law of physics. For every action, an equal and opposite reaction. For every debit, a credit. The patience, the silence, the gifts, these were not the reaction. They were the preparation for it. They were the calm, methodical stacking of weights on the other side of the scale. The memory of Helios was the fulcrum, unmoving, absolute, waiting for the moment when the balance would finally, inevitably, tip. Retaliation does not require an announcement. It needs only cause and effect. The council provided the cause. They waited for Evelyn Sharp to leave the chamber, called an emergency session, and passed a unanimous motion. It granted themselves full authority over all satellite operations in Terran-claimed space. They did not consult. They did not negotiate. They simply took. It was a direct challenge, a test of her perceived weakness. They expected a protest, a plea, a show of anger. They were probing the quiet human, seeing how far they could push before she made a sound. Within a week, 4 ambassadors found their data arrays unresponsive. Not destroyed, not hacked in a dramatic, visible way. They just failed. The Krell ambassador system first misrouted a shipment manifest, sending a load of luxury goods to a garbage processing facility. Then his personal communicator began displaying yesterday's messages as today's. A minor glitch. An annoyance. Then his entire embassy network slowed to a crawl. Diagnostics revealed nothing. Engineers found no intrusions, no malware signatures. The systems were just unreliable. The malfunctions cascaded. The Vresh delegation's environmental controls fluctuated wildly, cycling their embassy from Arctic cold to tropical humidity at random intervals. The Sileron ambassador's financial ledger double-paid all its vendors, then failed to process payroll. The Gellian Patriarch's private shuttle refused to acknowledge its own navigation database, stranding him in orbit for 6 hours. Unexplained. Isolated incidents. Technical gremlins. There were no claims of responsibility. No boasts from hidden channels. No threats levied. Just a series of quiet, debilitating failures. The pattern was clear to anyone who knew how to read it. This was not a declaration of war. It was a covert response to an overt insult. A message written in a language of disruption, not destruction. It did not break bones. It broke schedules. It did not spill blood. It spilled data. It was a demonstration of access. A reminder that the systems they relied on, their comms, their climate, their transport, their money, were not truly theirs. They were systems humanity could touch, and chose to touch with a light, precise, and infuriatingly gentle hand. Earth's first lesson was delivered without a word. Cross a line and your systems will fail quietly. Your comfort will evaporate. Your efficiency will crumble. Your certainty will become a liability. The response was not proportional to the insult of the satellite motion. It was a warning shot that cost nothing but inconvenience, yet proved everything. It proved that the web of dependency was not theoretical. It was operational. The leverage was real and could be applied with surgical accuracy. The quiet in the chamber after Evelyn's departure had been a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Something had to fill it. This was what filled it. Not a shout, but a systematic sigh of malfunction. The game had not just continued. It had escalated into a new, darker phase where the battlefield was invisible, and the weapons were the very conveniences they had learned to take for granted. Every ritual is a potential vulnerability. A ceremony is a sequence of actions. A tradition is a predictable pattern. Evelyn Sharp mapped them all. She noted the exact temperature each species preferred their meeting halls. The Krell liked it arid and warm, a mimicry of their home deserts. The Vresh demanded near-freezing chill to keep their carapaces from overheating. She knew the ceremonial taboos. The Gellian requirement to present the left mandible first in greeting. The Sileron prohibition against the color yellow in formal wear. She filed each detail. She did not see customs. She saw levers, pressure points, seams in their cultural armor. The aliens saw only rote behavior, a human politely following their complex ancient rules. They saw deference. They saw a student learning the master's craft. They never considered she was studying the craft only to find its weaknesses. She used their own customs against them, finding leverage in tradition. At a state dinner, she complimented the Vresh patriarch on the quality of the crystalline service plates, a traditional art form for his people. He swelled with pride. She then asked a gentle, probing question about the mining conditions for the raw material. He boasted for 10 minutes about a specific geologically unstable moon. This was not small talk. It was intelligence gathering. The location of a critical and vulnerable resource. A joke was data. She told a self-deprecating story about a human planetary survey team getting lost. The council chuckled. She watched who laughed with genuine amusement and who laughed with contempt. The contempt was a flag. It marked who viewed humanity as truly inferior, not just politically weak. A poem was a threat assessment. She recited a translated piece of old Earth verse about resilience in the face of a storm. She watched their reactions. Which ambassadors shifted uncomfortably? Which ones met her gaze with cold recognition? Their tells were more revealing than any spy report. A toast was a probe. She raised a glass to shared futures and open channels. A harmless sentiment. The way each delegate repeated the phrase or subtly altered it told her everything about their true intentions toward alliance. Her humor and poetry were not social grace. They were data streams for encoding. Each laugh, each pause, each flicker of an eye was a packet of information downloaded and stored. Her pleasantries were a cover for a constant, low-level scan of the room's psychological state. She understood the power structures they built to maintain order, the traditions they held sacred to reinforce their identity. She understood what these systems were designed to protect, and what they were designed to destroy, and she studied how to destroy them using their own blueprints. Their gallows were well-built, elegant even. She just needed to learn the design well enough to hang them with it. Ethics in her hands became a coldly analytic tool. She did not break their rules. She applied them. Exactly, ruthlessly. She used their own laws of hospitality to gain access to their networks. She used their codes of honor to force them into concessions they could not refuse without losing face. Their moral frameworks became cages she quietly locked from the inside. She weaponized their sense of fairness, their pride, their rituals. She turned their greatest strengths against them. Their rules were not obstacles. They were simply another set of weapons she had learned to wield better than they ever could. The chamber was not a diplomatic forum. It was an armory, and every tradition was another blade she was learning to hold. Territory is a distraction. The council fought over star systems and resource-rich moons, drawing lines on charts, arguing over mineral rights and orbital paths. They deployed fleets to guard barren rocks and empty sectors of space. They saw conquest as a matter of real estate. Evelyn reframed the entire conflict in a single move. During a heated debate over the mining claims to a supposedly vital asteroid belt, she simply withdrew. She did not object. She did not counterpropose. She gathered her datapad, stood, and left the chamber. The argument continued without her. The delegates, too engrossed in their squabble to notice her exit, was a statement. Humanity did not want dirt and rocks. It wanted leverage. Control the data, the networks, the flow of information, and you control everything. A star system is just coordinates. The power lies in who plots the course, who monitors the traffic, who translates the communications, and who can turn the lights off with a whispered command. A planet is inert matter. The power lies in the satellite network that observes it, the financial system that values its resources, and the environmental systems that keep its atmosphere breathable for its inhabitants. Access is the ultimate form of power in a connected galaxy. It is not about ownership. It is about permission. The permission to see, to hear, to move, to communicate. Evelyn's strategy was to become the gatekeeper of that permission. Not by conquering the gates, but by becoming the only one who knew how the locks worked. The quiet withdrawals from territorial disputes were not surrenders. They were redeployments. They moved the conflict from a visible physical battlefield to an invisible digital one. An empire built on code and influence does not need flags and armies. It needs firewalls and algorithms. It needs the loyalty of the systems everyone else takes for granted. The aliens continued to fight for land, boasting of new colonies and annexed systems. They celebrated each new patch of dirt they claimed, each new flag they planted. They did not see that she had already won the infrastructure. While they were busy drawing new borders on maps, she was writing the software that ran the maps. She controlled the navigation beacons their ships used. She managed the comms relays their governments relied on. She held the root access codes to the environmental processors that kept their new colonies alive. Their expansions were not victories. They were just adding more systems to the network she controlled. More nodes in the web, more dependencies. We prefer access to everything, and we have it. Not through force, but through integration. Through the subtle, patient work of making our systems indispensable. The battlefield is not in the void between stars, marked by fleets and fortifications. The battlefield is in the air they breathe, the data they transmit, the money they spend, and the words they speak. It is a battlefield they cannot see and do not know how to fight on. They are defending castles made of sand while the tide, quietly and inevitably, rises to claim them. Their new territories are just more rooms in a house where humanity holds all the keys. They are landlords of dust, tenants in a universe we built. The deadliest weapons look like harmless tools. They do not shine. They do not roar. They are common, familiar, ignored. A man with a folio of flower sketches. A woman with calloused hands and a technical manual. They arrived with the delegation, noted and then dismissed. The florist spent his days in the embassy gardens, sketching alien blooms, taking soil samples, noting pollination patterns. The council saw a harmless hobbyist. They did not see a man studying biological triggers, learning which pollens caused allergic reactions in which species, which spores could cloud a security camera lens, which plant's roots could quietly crack the foundation of a building. His sketches were not art. They were blueprints for organic sabotage. The submarine engineer understood pressure. She knew how to keep a hull intact under the crushing weight of a dark ocean. She knew the precise stress points, the failure thresholds, the quiet groans of metal under strain. She applied this knowledge to other systems, to data networks under the pressure of an information surge, to political alliances under the stress of scandal, to environmental systems operating at the very edge of their capacity. Her skill was not in building things to withstand pressure, but in knowing exactly how much pressure to apply to make them fail. She could collapse a support beam or a diplomatic negotiation with the same calm precision. Their civilian skills were repurposed for a silent war of infiltration. The florist's knowledge of botany became a tool for designing undetectable bioagents. The engineers' understanding of structural integrity became a method for identifying critical weaknesses in alien infrastructure. They did not carry weapons. They carried clipboards and soil testers and calibration devices. They were the human network, the hands that actually built the mirrors. They installed the air purifiers, programmed the translator pins, and maintained the networks. They were the technicians who made the gifts function. The council saw servants, helpers, functionaries whose names they never bothered to learn. Evelyn saw her most valuable operatives. Their access was total because it was boring. A technician servicing an air filter has the run of a building. A gardener tending the embassy grounds hears every conversation held outside. Their ordinariness was their perfect camouflage. They moved through secure areas unchallenged because they carried toolkits, not rifles. They asked questions about ventilation ducts and soil pH levels, not military deployments. They gathered secrets while appearing to do nothing more than their mundane jobs. They planted the gifts. The engineer would install a climate control unit and leave a nearly invisible listening device nestled beside the main intake valve. The florist would present a bouquet of rare blossoms, each stem tipped with a microdot sensor that would shed into the soil and monitor vibrations. They maintained the systems, ensuring the flow of data back to human intelligence never stopped. They were the cogs in the machine, and because they were invisible, the machine ran smoothly for its victims until the moment it was turned against them. The florist and the engineer became humanity's deadliest diplomats. Their pens were mightier than plasma lances. Their wrenches held more power than entire fleets. They did not negotiate treaties. They engineered realities. They created the conditions where treaties were unnecessary, where surrender was the only logical option. They operated in the quiet spaces, in the maintenance shafts and the flower beds where true power is built and maintained. Victory is not won by the general who gives the order. It is built by the unseen hands that make the order possible. It is secured by the people who are never in the room when the history is written, but without whom there would be no history to write. Every word you say is recorded by your own gift. The translator pins were presented as a marvel of human ingenuity, a generous donation to the entire Galactic Council. They arrived in sleek, unmarked boxes, a perfect solution to the maddening confusion of 1,000 languages. They clipped to a lapel or tunic. They were light, efficient, and from the first moment indispensable. Each quarterly upgrade made them a little smarter. The translations became more fluid, more nuanced. The battery life extended. The range improved. They also became a little more loyal. A subtle shift in their core programming with each update. A deeper integration with networks only Evelyn's people controlled. A quiet preference for her command protocols. The upgrades were automatic, mandatory. You could not decline them. To reject the update was to render the pin useless, a dead piece of metal. They welcomed the improvements. They never asked about the changes they couldn't see. They are not just translating words. They are listening. A microphone is always active. They are analyzing. The pin measures vocal stress, heart rate via subdermal sensors, pheromone output in species that emit them. They are reporting. Every conversation, every muttered curse, every private reassurance whispered between allies in a hallway is logged, encrypted, and transmitted. The data doesn't travel on official channels. It piggybacks on civilian comms traffic, weather satellite feeds, even the harmless data stream of entertainment broadcasts. It is a whisper in a hurricane of noise. They form a galaxy-wide surveillance network hidden in plain sight. Every ambassador, every aide, every functionary who wears one becomes a node, a listening post, a source. The network is not centralized. It is a distributed web, resilient, almost impossible to trace or shut down. It sees everything. It hears everything. It is the ultimate intelligence tool. It doesn't infiltrate. It is invited in and put to work. The aliens welcomed the convenience. They celebrated the end of miscommunication, the death of the clumsy, slow translation booths. They never considered the cost. The price of this seamless conversation was their every word. Their privacy was the currency, and they spent it without a second thought. They saw a tool for building bridges. They did not see it was also a wiretap. Every private meeting in a secured chamber, every whispered secret between conspirators, every desperate plea from a subordinate is funneled back to Earth, to a room of analysts who catalog it, cross-reference it, and build a perfect, real-time model of galactic politics. They know who is lying before the lie is finished. They know who is afraid. They know who is planning a betrayal. The pins give them a god's eye view of every secret. Their own technology becomes the cage around them. They built their diplomacy upon it. They rely on it for every transaction, every negotiation, every tearful call home. It is the foundation of their new unified community, and that foundation belongs to someone else. It is a prison where the bars are made of their own trust, and they lock themselves inside. The pins were never a tool for communication. That was the lie, the attractive wrapping. They were always a tool for control, a mechanism for absolute awareness, a way to hold the entire political structure of the galaxy in the palm of one hand, to know every move before it was made, to hear every plan before it was executed. They gave their secrets away willingly. They clipped the devices to their clothes themselves. They activated them with their own voices. They provided the power source. They performed the maintenance. They demanded the upgrades. In their desire for understanding, they handed over the keys to their entire civilization. They asked for a dictionary and received a panopticon. They wanted to be heard, and they were. By everyone they were trying to keep secrets from. Kindness is a trap when it is calculated. It is not a feeling. It is a tactic. The air purification systems humming in the basements of alien embassies are not acts of charity. They are life support. The Krell delegation breathes air scrubbed clean of industrial toxins by human-made filters. The Vresh enjoy climates perfectly calibrated to prevent their chitin from drying out. This is not comfort. It is a cultivated necessity. Remove the systems, and within hours the air grows thick and unbreathable. Eyes water, throats constrict, productivity halts. It is a physical dependency, engineered and installed by friendly hands. The spices are a smaller thing, a subtle pleasure. The Siluran palate, once dulled by nutrient paste, now craves the sharp, smoky flavor of a Terran pepper blend. The Jellian serving staff seasoning their meals with human-provided herbs. It seems insignificant, a culinary curiosity. But taste is a powerful anchor. It creates a longing, a daily reminder of something only one source can provide. These are not gifts delivered and forgotten. They are consumables. They require regular resupply, regular contact, regular reminders of who provides the small joys that make the endless political grind bearable. These are not gifts. They are dependencies, each one carefully cultivated like a rare orchid, a web of small critical needs that, taken together, form a cage of comfort. To remove human support would not be a political setback. It would be a physical and psychological crisis. The air would turn foul. The food would turn bland. The music would stop. The immediate tangible discomfort would be overwhelming. It is a form of soft power that borders on coercion. There is no threat of violence. Only the silent, looming threat of a return to a lesser state of being. A life without the small improvements they have come to see as normal. The Council grows used to the comfort. They stop seeing the systems as foreign implants. They see them as part of their environment. The hum of the air scrubbers becomes background noise. The spices become a staple. They are blind to the strings attached to every filter cartridge, every shipment, every software update. They are like addicts, unaware their supplier controls their well-being. They enjoy the high and ignore the cost. They do not ask what happens if the supply is cut. They assume it never will be. They trust the hand that feeds them because the food tastes good. Earth's generosity is a leash, and Evelyn holds the end. It is a leash made of clean air and pleasant tastes and reliable technology. It is a leash they willingly put around their own necks. Every time they take a deep breath of purified air, every time they savor a spiced meal, they give the leash a gentle tug, reminding her it is still there, reminding them who holds it. The leverage is absolute because it is not based on fear. It is based on habit, on the quiet horror of losing what you have grown accustomed to. They are already caught. The web is complete. They live within it. They breathe it. They consume it. They just don't know they can't leave it. The trap was never sprung. It was simply lived in until it became home.